I'm going to talk to you for the next 10 minutes is about how I personally do a buyer consultation. I've been doing buyer consultations for practically my entire real estate career, and it has worked wonderfully for me, and I'm never going to stop doing it. So I'm going to share with you what works for me personally. It may be different for you. You can do a modification of what I do because we're all different. We all have different personalities and we all have different experiences. So why, number one, or first, why do I do a buyer consultation? I do a buyer consultation because I personally want to qualify the buyer. I do not want to be wasting my time. I don't care what they tell me on the phone, how much money they have, how great their credit is. I personally want to qualify them myself. So I need them to come in. And qualifying them myself most of the time means that I have Manny with me, because Manny is the one who actually can verify those numbers. But not all the time I have Manny with me. Sometimes I'm doing it myself. I want to see the pre-approval. So they come in and I want to see that pre-approval. And when I get that pre-approval, I do not ever take it for face value. I do call that loan officer and find out how the pre-approval was done. And 8 out of 10 times I end up switching them to Manny because the pre-approval was not done correctly. For example, I had somebody, my latest consultation, they told me they had a pre-approval. Lovely couple, sat down in front of them, found out that the loan officer looked at nothing. This was Chase Bank. So I said, I raised my hands, I said, you have no pre-approval, let's start again. So that's why that's one of the reasons why I do the buyer consultation, because I need to qualify them myself. The second reason why I do the buyer consultation, because it's during that time when I'm sitting in this room for about 2 hours, sometimes longer, that's when I am solidifying the relationship. We just talk about business, we get sometimes on a personal level. It's hard to do that when you talk with somebody on the phone. Yes, you can have a nice little conversation with them, but when you don't see each other face to face and see expressions and body movement, it's not the same. So I do want them to come into the office, and I do want to get that relationship going. It definitely does work, because often, I wouldn't say often, on occasion they will even refer someone to me before they've even closed. And I have a couple like that now. I must have had about 6, 7 referrals from them, and I still haven't closed them. We're working on it. And then the third reason why I do the buyer consultation is for safety. I'm not going to meet a stranger on the street. I might make an exception for the rare listing that I get every now and again, but I am definitely not going to meet somebody on the street. If somebody has ill intentions, they're not likely to do that if you're asking them to come into the office. So it gives me some kind of security that I'm not going to be potentially working with a weirdo. Right? So that's the reason why I do the buyer consultations. My consultations are broken down into 3 components. The first component is I'm talking about the market, the process, I'm introducing myself. The second component is I'm asking them about what they want. And the third component is the financing. Manny looks at the financing to see if what they want matches what they can afford. So that's why we're in here for a very long time. We go through that exercise. So going back to part 1, it's kind of long. I start by introducing myself. Everyone's story is going to be different. Take whatever strength you have, whatever that is. Everyone's story is going to be different, because I truly believe it's that introduction that is going to make them decide how much they're going to listen to you. All right. So I know my audience. They're from Brooklyn, from Queens. I have a lot in common with them. So I tell them I start off by introducing myself. And 2 minutes, I say it very, very quickly. I tell them, obviously I work here. I have been an agent for 14 years. I've lived in Brooklyn for 10 years, Queens for 10 years, Long Island for 14 years. I've worked in corporate America for over 20 years. I've been a first-time home buyer. I've been a move-up buyer. I own rental properties. I've been married for a long time. I have children. All the things that they're going to fall into one of those categories, and I could see just by, then I conclude and I say, and I take my experience, good, bad, and indifferent, to help you, to help the people in front of me. And I could tell by the expression in their eyes that they like what I'm saying, and that anything I say after that, they're going to listen. So you all have to find your story. Everyone is going to be different. Whatever strength you have about yourself, everyone should find their own story. Then I go into the market. And the reason why I go into the market is because a lot of these people, my clientele, are referrals. I'm going to say 99% of them are referrals. And then depending on who gave them to me, they're going to have, that person had a different experience. So if I helped them buy a house during the buyer's market, and their friend told them how, they did lowball offers and went saw 20 different houses, they might think they can do the same thing, right? So I have to tell them, I have to educate them about the history of the market, and I do. I go for the history of the market and I bring it up to where we are currently so that they can understand that that was your friend's experience, but this is not going to be your experience. It's going to be very, very different. So I do go through the market. Then after that, after I go through the market, then I talk to them about agency. I explain to them the difference between a traditional agent and a buyer's agent. And I never ever knock a traditional agent. I always say in my sentence that they're not doing anything illegal. This is just how it is. But this is not how I choose to work, right? And then so I go over, I talk about the traditional agent. Then I go into quite some details about my role as a buyer's agent. And I always emphasize my role because I said every buyer agent is going to do their own, their own version of how they want to service it. So whatever I'm explaining to you now is what I personally do. So I go through all of that with them. I'm even now at the point where I say, you don't even have to sign that buyer broker agreement anymore because I feel that I bring such value to what I put out there that, if you want to walk away, that's your loss. I mean, I literally say that, and I said, but it rarely happens. It might happen about once or twice a year. So, because no situation is perfect. So I go into quite some depth about my role as a buyer's agent. Then I talk about the condos and co-ops. If they don't want to hear about that, I gladly skip that. But one or two will do, so I definitely want to talk about condos and co-ops. I also talk to them about short sales. And I make them understand that as a buyer, as their agent, I have absolutely no control of the end results. And so it's really a risk if they want to go into that type of transaction. So I make that perfectly clear. I talk about the home inspection, and I really do talk about the home inspection because this is where a lot of transactions do fall apart. And I really want to emphasize with them that they are not purchasing a new house. The house, there are going to be things wrong with the house, and you're going to have to trust me on the things that we need to push and the things that we should just go work on our own. And, I do give them examples of situations, because always have them, situations where we do walk away. Because I want to show them that, I'm not pushing for you to buy a house. If I feel something is wrong and I agree with you, I'm not going to, I personally, I personally can't sleep at night if they're going to buy a house that I know that I wouldn't buy myself because of some safety hazard or some environmental hazard. So we do talk about the home inspection a lot because they are a nervous wreck. And I do emphasize that we have to do the home inspection very quickly because multiple offers are coming in every single day. After the home inspection, then I talk to them about the role of their real estate attorney, what their real estate attorney is going to be doing for them. After we've talked about the real estate attorney, then I kind of summarize the process, how it's all going to work. I set you up with your criteria, you tell me what you like, we go shopping for a home, we get an accepted offer, we negotiate the repairs if any, and I go through that whole process with them, so to tie it all together. And then at that point now, if Manny is not part of this consultation, then I'm going to talk about the pre-approval. I'm going to look at the pre-approval that they have. I'm going to ask them questions. I'm going to ask them questions. How was it done? How long did the loan officer, how quickly did he give you that pre-approval? Did they take your tax returns and pay stubs? I need to know all that stuff because I do not want to be wasting my time. And they obviously don't need to be wasting their time either. And I always explain to them, it's not your fault. You're not in this industry, you don't know. But I'm telling you, I do this every day. Many of these transactions fall apart because a pre-approval is done inadequately. But if Manny is there, then he goes into the whole shebang about FHA, conventional, the same kind of quality information that I put in on from the agent perspective. He will do it from the mortgage perspective. So then I ask them, part two is like, now it's all about you. So now they've listened to me enough. I do always encourage them to be interactive. I encourage them, stop me if you want me to repeat something or if you're not clear on what I'm saying. I always encourage them to do that. So part two now, they sit down and I ask them about you. And I say to them, husband and wife, you talked about it. Honey, we want to do this. Tell me what the both of you spoke about. What are you looking to accomplish? So I get that information from them. As much information as possible. If they don't give me enough, I ask them, what if it's on the main road? What if it's a corner property? Do you have to have a basement? Do you have to have a formal dining room? I try to get from them as much as I can. Then the third part of the consultation, if Manny is around, is now looking at their finances. So he's going to do his thing, as I mentioned before, and we're going to see where they stand. Manny, he pulls the credit right here. He's looking at their paperwork. He can't, depending on their occupation, he can't get all the information, but he can have a pretty good understanding. For example, if it's a nurse and they get differential pay or they do per diem work, he's going to have to get that information from his employer. But he's going to have an idea based on what they presented. And once he's done that, one of the questions we always ask them is, what does that look like to you monthly? How much are you willing to spend monthly? And 9 out of 10 times they give a ridiculous number. 2,000, I can't tell you how many times I've heard 2,000 or 2,500, and you're only putting down a minimum amount of money. And so it's at that point now, we iron out that number. And we tell them that is not realistic. And then we have to come up with an alternative? Can you get money